The impossible discovery. John Carter was just a simple man, a mechanic, a soldier once. But now he spent most of his days fixing broken engines in a small garage outside Las Vegas. Life was quiet, boring, until the night everything changed. It started with a bright light in the sky. John was driving home late, the desert road empty except for his old truck. Then, boom, a fiery object streaked across the sky, crashing somewhere beyond the Rocky Hills. John hit the brakes. Dust rose around him as his truck stopped. His heart pounded. A meteor? A plane crash? He wasn't sure, but curiosity pulled him forward. He grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out. The night air was cold, but his skin burned with excitement. He climbed over rocks, following the faint glow ahead. The ground was warm under his boots, as if something had burned through the earth itself. Then he saw it. A silver ship, half buried in the sand. It was sleek, smooth, and pulsing with dim blue lights, unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't from Earth. It couldn't be. John swallowed hard. He knew what this meant. If the government found out, they would take it, bury it. But he was alone. No one else had seen the crash. Maybe, just maybe, he could look inside. A terrible idea. But he stepped closer anyway. Inside the alien ship, the ship's surface was cold and smooth like polished glass. No doors, no seams, but as John reached out, the metal hummed under his fingers. A circle of blue light expanded, revealing an opening. The ship was letting him in. John hesitated. Every instinct told him to run. But something deeper, something primal, forced him forward. He took a breath and stepped inside. The interior was dark, silent, yet strangely alive. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, shifting like water. The air smelled clean, but not like anything from Earth. Then he saw it. A strange machine sat in the center of the room. Small, no bigger than a suitcase, but it pulsed with energy. Strange wires wrapped around it like veins. Symbols on its surface shifted, rearranging as if aware of him. John wasn't a scientist, but he had a feeling. This was no ordinary machine. He stepped closer, his fingers brushing the surface. The moment he touched it, everything changed. The machine activates. A sudden shock ran through John's body. The ship came alive. Lights flared. Alarms screamed in a language he couldn't understand. The machine's symbols glowed red. Then, a deep, inhuman voice filled the room. "You should not be here, human." John spun around. There was no one else. The voice came from the ship itself. The walls pulsed. The floor shook. John turned back to the machine. But it was too late. A bright flash swallowed him whole. Lost in time. John gasped as his vision blurred. His body felt weightless, as if falling through space. Colors twisted, sounds stretched. His mind burned with an impossible sensation. Then he crashed onto hard ground. Dirt filled his mouth. He coughed, blinking rapidly. His head pounded. Where was he? The air smelled different. Rich, thick, wild. He pushed himself up, his hands sinking into damp soil. He was in a dense jungle, trees towering above him. The sky was deep green, the air buzzing with strange sounds. John staggered to his feet. The machine, it was still attached to his arm, glowing with alien symbols. But the ship, it was gone. His breath came fast. What had just happened? Then the ground trembled. A deep, guttural roar shook the air. John's heart stopped. He turned slowly and froze. A creature emerged from the trees, 30 feet tall, scaly, yellow eyes burning with hunger. John knew exactly what it was, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. This wasn't Earth as he knew it. This was the past. The time machine had worked. But before he could react, another sound echoed through the jungle, a deep metallic growl. John spun around. and saw something worse. A towering alien figure, wrapped in black armor, stood on the rocky cliffs above, eyes burning red. The voice from the ship whispered in his mind, "The Guardian has found you." The alien warrior raised a massive, energy-bladed spear. "You have stolen what is not yours." John didn't wait to hear more. He ran, lost in time. John Carter's lungs burned as he sprinted through the thick jungle. Branches slapped against his face, roots grabbed at his feet, but he didn't dare stop. Behind him, two impossible threats loomed, one from Earth's ancient past, the other from an unknown future. The Tyrannosaurus Rex let out another deafening roar, shaking the trees as it thundered forward, its massive claws ripping apart anything in its way. But John's bigger problem was the figure standing on the rocky ridge. The alien warrior. John risked a glance back. The Guardian. That's what the voice in the ship had called it. A towering figure, covered in black, metallic armor that shifted like living metal. The Guardian wasn't just watching, it was tracking him. And then it moved. With an unnatural blur of speed, the Guardian leaped from the ridge, landing gracefully between John and the massive dinosaur. It was hunting him, but it wasn't afraid of the beast behind them. John's heart pounded. He had seconds to react. Run or fight. He chose the only option that made sense. He ran. A deadly jungle. John ducked under a thick branch, sliding down a muddy slope. His boots lost grip for a second, but he caught himself before tumbling into a dense cluster of ferns. The air was hot, humid, thick with the scent of wet earth, and something unfamiliar. Somewhere behind him, the T-Rex stomped forward, its heavy breaths like a steam engine. But where was the Guardian? John didn't wait to find out. He sprinted through the jungle, weaving between ancient trees that stretched high into a sky he barely recognized. Everything around him felt wrong. The trees weren't like the ones back home. Their leaves shimmered in colors that shifted with the wind. Strange, glowing insects buzzed through the air, leaving trails of light behind them. In the distance, the calls of unseen creatures echoed, a mix of roars, screeches, and deep, haunting sounds. He wasn't just in the past. He was somewhere far more dangerous. Then, a flash of blue light. John barely had time to react before the Guardian appeared in front of him, blocking his path. It didn't run. It didn't chase. It teleported. John skidded to a stop, breath ragged. His eyes darted to the Guardian's weapon, a sleek, curved spear that hummed with raw energy. The alien warrior tilted its head, studying him. Then, in a deep metallic voice, it spoke. "Time is not yours to break, human." The Guardian's judgment. John's fingers twitched toward his belt. He had a knife, but what good would it do? The Guardian took a step closer. Even in the dim jungle light, its armor gleamed, shifting like liquid metal. The patterns across its chest pulsed, forming strange symbols that John couldn't understand. It was scanning him, judging him. John swallowed. "Look, I don't know what this thing is," he said, raising his hands. "The ship, it crashed. I didn't steal anything." The Guardian's glowing red eyes narrowed. "You touched the machine. You altered the timeline." John clenched his jaw. "I didn't mean to." The Guardian remained still. Then, without warning, it lunged. John barely dodged as the energy spear slashed through the air, cutting into the massive tree behind him. The bark hissed and burned, a deep scar of molten heat left behind. John stumbled backward. "Wait." The Guardian moved with inhuman speed. It grabbed John by the collar, lifting him off the ground effortlessly. "You are an anomaly." John struggled. The machine on his wrist flashed, reacting to the Guardian's touch. A sharp shockwave burst out, knocking them both apart. John hit the ground hard. The Guardian staggered back, gripping its weapon. Then something even worse happened. A deep guttural growl rumbled through the jungle. Not from the T-Rex. Something bigger. Something unnatural. John looked up, heart hammering. The Guardian's posture shifted, no longer aggressive, but alert. A new presence had entered the battlefield. A monster from another time. The trees trembled as something massive moved through them, larger than the T-Rex. A shape loomed in the darkness, its form shifting, almost glitching, as if it didn't belong in this world. Its body was wrapped in a strange, glowing mist, its eyes burning with cold, unnatural light. John didn't need to be a scientist to know. This thing was not from Earth's past. The Guardian slowly turned its head, its red eyes flashing with recognition. "They have come," it muttered. John had no idea what that meant, but he knew one thing. If the Guardian was worried, he should be terrified. The monstrous being stepped forward. Reality itself seemed to ripple around it. John felt an unnatural pull in his bones, as if the creature was warping time itself. The Guardian's grip tightened around its spear. For the first time, John saw something in its stance. Not anger, not rage, fear. Then, the creature attacked, and time shattered around them. The chase across history. John Carter barely had time to react before reality tore apart. The monstrous being, the thing that should not exist, lunged. It wasn't like the T-Rex, or the Guardian, or anything John had ever seen before. Its body was wrong. It shimmered, glitched, shifting between forms. A shadow 1 second, a mass of writhing limbs the next. Its eyes burned like frozen stars, cold and emotionless, fixed on John as if he were an error in the universe that needed correction. The Guardian moved first. It spun its energy spear in a tight arc, its black armor shifting like liquid metal. The air itself rippled, charged with unseen power. "Reaper," the Guardian growled. Then it attacked. The spear slashed through the air, crackling with blue energy. The creature, the Reaper, barely flinched. Instead, it let out a low, unnatural sound, and the world seemed to break apart. John felt it instantly. A crushing force wrapped around him, pulling him in every direction at once. His skin prickled, his vision blurred. It was as if time itself had lost meaning. He was standing, falling, flying, dissolving, all at once. And then, everything shattered. A violent arrival. John hit the ground hard. He gasped, blinking fast. His ears rang. His body ached. Where was he? The sky above was deep purple, streaked with burning clouds. Giant structures, towers of metal and glass, stretched across the horizon. But they were crumbling, as if abandoned for centuries. The air smelled strange, like rust and something electric. John groaned, pushing himself up. His wrist was burning. The time machine, or whatever it was, still clung to him, pulsing with red symbols. It felt damage. A shadow fell over him. John's breath caught as he turned. The Guardian stood a few feet away, kneeling in the dust, one hand gripping its spear. Its black armor was cracked, glowing with deep molten veins. And behind them, a portal. A jagged, broken hole in reality, shimmering like shattered glass. John swallowed hard. What the hell just happened? The Guardian rose slowly. Its glowing red eyes locked onto him. "You should not have survived." "Yeah," John huffed, wincing as he stood. "Well, neither should you." The Guardian didn't argue. Instead, it scanned the ruins around them, its posture tense. The machine malfunctioned. It said, voice metallic but controlled, "We have been displaced in time." John frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" The Guardian turned to him. "It means you have made things worse." John opened his mouth to argue, but then a distant, inhuman shriek echoed through the city, a sound he recognized. John turned, heart hammering. From the broken ruins, shadows began to shift. The Reapers had followed them. Running through ruins, John didn't wait for an explanation. He ran. His boots pounded against cracked pavement as he sprinted down a shattered street, dodging debris. The Guardian moved beside him, effortlessly leaping over obstacles. Behind them, the Reapers poured out of the ruins, twisting and glitching through the air. They weren't running. They were flickering, jumping in and out of existence, closing the distance with impossible speed. "Where the hell are we?" John shouted between breaths. The Guardian's red eyes flashed. A broken future. John nearly tripped. What? One of many futures that should not exist. The Guardian glanced at him. "We should not be here." "Yeah, no kidding." Another shrieking howl tore through the air. John risked a glance back. Bad idea. One of the Reapers flickered forward, appearing just feet away. Its shifting, liquid-like form reached out, claws stretching unnaturally. John dove aside, rolling hard against the ground. The Guardian spun, swinging its energy spear in a wide arc. The blade carved through the Reaper's body, only for the creature to melt around it, reforming instantly. John cursed. "They don't die, do they?" The Guardian didn't answer. It just grabbed John's arm and ran. The hidden chamber. They dashed through a crumbling tunnel, emerging into what looked like an old command center. Rows of rusted consoles stretched across the floor, dim screens flickering with alien symbols. In the center, a massive circular platform pulsed with faint blue energy. The Guardian shoved John forward. "Step onto the platform. Now." John hesitated, staring at the device. "What is this?" "A secondary time anchor," the Guardian growled. "A way out." A bone-chilling howl erupted from behind. The Reapers had found them. John jumped onto the platform. The Guardian followed. It pressed a hand to its chest, activating something in its armor. The machine roared to life. The world twisted. Reality bent. And then, another time. Another nightmare. John hit the ground again, but this time it was cold metal. He groaned, rolling onto his back. His body still felt disconnected, like he had been pulled through a blender of time and space. Then he heard it. The hum of machines. John forced himself up, and his breath caught. He was in a massive chamber, filled with rows of glowing pods. Inside each one, humans, frozen, suspended, thousands of them. A deep, sinking feeling settled in John's gut. He turned to the Guardian. "Where the hell are we now?" The alien warrior stared at the pods, its red eyes unreadable. The last human stronghold. John felt his stomach drop. He wasn't in the past anymore. He wasn't even in his own time. He was in the final days of humanity. And the Reapers weren't done with him yet. The Guardian's secret. John Carter had seen some crazy things in his life. He had survived wars, explosions, and near-death experiences. But nothing prepared him for this. Thousands of humans suspended in glowing pods, their bodies locked in some kind of deep sleep. The massive chamber stretched beyond sight, filled with strange, humming machines. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, casting eerie shadows on the metallic floor. John took a shaky step forward. This wasn't Earth. He didn't know where, or when, he was. The Guardian stood motionless beside him, its glowing red eyes scanning the pods. John turned to face the alien warrior, his voice low and sharp. "Where the hell are we?" The Guardian didn't answer immediately. Instead, it walked forward, its black armor shifting like liquid metal. Finally, it spoke. "The last refuge of your kind." John's stomach twisted. Refuge? From what? The Guardian's red eyes flickered. From extinction. A deep silence filled the chamber. John took a step closer, his hands curling into fists. "What do you mean extinction?" The Guardian exhaled, a strange, mechanical sound. Then, it pressed a hand against one of the pods. A small panel lit up, displaying text in a language John didn't recognize. "Your world fell long ago, human." John's chest tightened. "That's a lie." The Guardian turned to him, eyes unreadable. "You have seen the Reapers. You have felt their power. They do not just erase people, Carter. They erase time. Your Earth was one of their casualties. John's head spun. No, that wasn't possible. He stumbled backward, gripping his temples. I was just there. I was in the past. Earth was fine. If my planet was destroyed, I shouldn't even exist. The Guardian studied him. Then, in a quiet, almost unsettling voice, it said, "You exist because you were never meant to." John froze. The words hit him like a bullet. He shook his head. No, that doesn't make sense. The Guardian tilted its head slightly. It does. You are an anomaly, Carter, a fracture in time. The moment you touched the machine, you became untethered. Now, the Reapers hunt you, not just to kill you, but to erase every trace of your existence. John's mouth went dry. The Reapers weren't chasing him because he stole the time machine. They were chasing him because he wasn't supposed to be alive. A broken history. John tried to steady his breathing, but his mind was spinning. He turned, staring at the thousands of frozen humans. His people, his species, the last remnants of a time that no longer existed. If Earth is gone, he said slowly, then what's the point of these people? What are they waiting for? The Guardian hesitated. Then, in a voice almost too human, it said, "Hope." John narrowed his eyes. Hope for what? The Guardian looked at the pods again. A reset. John's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of something huge pressing down on him. You're telling me someone is trying to bring humanity back? The Guardian nodded. Some civilizations refuse to accept erasure. John let out a long breath. And I'm guessing the Reapers don't like that. The Guardian's red eyes flashed. No. And now they know you are here. As if on cue, the entire chamber shook. A deep, unnatural howl echoed through the walls. John's blood turned to ice. They had found him. A desperate escape. The Guardian snapped into action. Its spear extended, glowing brighter as its armor hardened. John backed up, scanning the room. There was no exit, just endless rows of pods and cold metal walls. I don't suppose you have a plan?" he asked. The Guardian didn't look at him. "Stay behind me." John didn't argue. The walls rippled, not from an explosion, but from something worse. Time itself was distorting. John's skin crawled as 3 Reapers emerged from the shimmering air, their twisted forms glitching and flickering. Their hollow, burning eyes locked onto him. They weren't chasing him anymore. They had cornered him. The lead Reaper, a towering figure with jagged, shifting limbs, stepped forward. Its voice wasn't a voice at all. It was a low, vibrating hum that stabbed into John's brain. Error. Must be erased. John raised his fists. He knew it was useless, but he'd be damned if he went down without a fight. The Guardian moved first. With blinding speed, it launched forward, driving its spear straight into the Reaper's core. A pulse of blue light erupted, but the Reaper didn't die. It shuddered, flickered, and then reformed, completely unharmed. John's heart dropped. "They can't die," he whispered. The Guardian didn't answer. It simply turned to him and said one word. "Run." John didn't need to be told twice. He spun and bolted down the corridor, dodging past the sleeping pods. Behind him, the Reapers let out an ear-piercing screech. The Guardian fell back beside him, armor shifting. There is only one way to survive this. John risked a glance. "I'm all ears, big guy." The Guardian's armor pulsed. "You must return to the point where it all began." John's stomach twisted, back to the ship, back to the desert. "But how?" he asked. "The machine's broken. We're stuck here." The Guardian's eyes burned brighter than ever. "Not if we take the Reapers with us." John barely had time to process that before the Guardian grabbed his arm and activated the machine. A deafening boom exploded around them. The world shattered. And then, time unraveled. John opened his eyes. His head was pounding. His vision blurred. Everything was wrong. He was falling through memories, timelines, fragments of reality. He saw glimpses of the past, his own life, Earth before the Reapers, the ship crashing in the desert. Then, something terrifying. A glimpse of what was coming. John saw a future Earth, ruined, burning, stripped of all life. The Reapers had won. Time itself was unraveling. Then, darkness. A deep voice echoed in his mind. You cannot stop what has already begun. John gasped for air. And then, he woke up. Sand, heat, the smell of gasoline. John staggered to his feet, his boots pressed into familiar desert soil. His truck was parked nearby. The alien ship was still there, and the machine was still in his hands. He had made it back. But so had the Reapers, and this time they weren't just hunting him. They were coming for all of Earth. The Reapers arrive. John Carter stumbled forward, his boots sinking into the warm desert sand. His breath came in ragged gasps as he struggled to process what had just happened. One moment, he was lost in a dying future, running from creatures that could erase him from time itself. The next, he was back. The crashed alien ship sat before him, its sleek, curved metal gleaming under the moonlight. It looked untouched, just as he had found it the first time. But John knew better. Time had reset, and something had followed him through. A cold shiver ran down his spine as the desert air grew unnaturally still. There was no wind, no sound. Even the distant hum of insects had vanished. John swallowed hard. Then the stars above flickered, not like clouds passing over them. They glitched like a broken screen. His stomach dropped. They were here. The Reapers had come to finish what they started. The sky splits open. A low, vibrating hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. John turned slowly, eyes widening as the sky itself cracked. It started as a thin, jagged fracture in the night, pulsing with eerie purple and blue light. The crack spread like splintering glass, stretching across the heavens. Then the void tore open. A massive, swirling tear in reality loomed above, its edges writhing like a living moon in time. Dark figures emerged, their forms twisting and flickering as they descended toward the earth. John had seen them before, shifting, liquid-like monsters with cold, burning eyes. The Reapers. Only this time, they weren't alone. Behind them, something much larger stirred within the tier. A colossal figure, its shape ever-changing, pulsed within the distortion. A creature so massive it seemed to exist beyond time itself. Its hollow, burning gaze fixed on John. He felt it in his bones. This wasn't just a hunter. This was their leader. The Endbringer. A voice, not spoken, but felt, rippled through John's mind. Time rejects you. John gritted his teeth. Yeah. Well, I reject you right back. The Guardian's last stand. A sharp metallic clang echoed from behind. John spun around as the Guardian stepped forward, its spear glowing bright blue. The alien warrior stood tall, ready to fight. Even after everything, even after nearly being erased, it still had one mission: to stop the Reapers. The Guardian's voice was calm but heavy. This is the battle that was always meant to happen. John clenched his fists. Then let's make sure it's the last one. The Guardian didn't respond. Instead, it raised its spear toward the sky. A deep pulse rippled through the air, and the crashed alien ship came alive. Lights flared along its hull. Symbols shifted across its surface. Energy hummed through the ground. The ship was reactivating. John's eyes widened. Wait, you can power it up. The Guardian nodded. It was never truly broken, only waiting. John exhaled sharply. Then let's use it to end this. The Guardian didn't hesitate. It leaped into the air, landing on the ship's surface. Panels slid open as alien symbols pulsed, responding to its touch. The ship was a weapon. John grinned. All right. Ugly, he muttered, turning to the Reapers. Come and get me. The battle for time. The first Reaper struck. It flickered forward, its jagged limbs reaching for John. But he was ready. John dove aside, rolling onto the sand. He grabbed a chunk of metal from the wreckage, a sharp, jagged piece, and swung it with all his strength. The metal sliced through the Reaper's form, but instead of cutting, the creature split apart, then reformed instantly. John cursed. Figures. The Reaper lunged again, but before it could touch him, a bright blue spear impaled it from behind. The Guardian landed beside John, yanking its weapon free. The Reaper convulsed, its form flickering violently. Then it exploded into mist. John blinked. You can kill them. The Guardian's red eyes flared. Only with a precise strike. Do not let them touch you. John swallowed. Noted. Then the sky erupted in chaos. More Reapers poured out of the rift, their twisted forms swarming like locusts. The Guardian fought like a demon. Its spear became a blur of blue light, cutting down Reapers as fast as they came. But for every one that fell, more took its place. John ran to the ship, his mind racing. There had to be something, anything he could do. Then he saw it. A control panel, one with symbols that looked familiar. He had seen them before, when he first touched the machine. It was a manual override. John took a deep breath and placed his hands on the panel. The ship responded instantly. The symbols flared to life, and suddenly, John understood them. The machine wasn't just a time travel device. It was a reset switch. John's pulse quickened. He could fix everything. But there was a catch. To reset time, he would have to erase everything that had happened, including himself. A final choice. John looked up at the Guardian, still fighting. He looked at the sky, at the Reapers, at the Endbringer staring down from the tear in reality. He had a choice. If he activated the reset, time would correct itself. The Reapers would never come. The Guardian's mission would never happen. But John Carter, he would never have existed. He let out a slow breath. Then he made his decision. John slammed his hand onto the control panel. The ship roared to life. A massive pulse of golden energy erupted outward, washing over everything. The Guardian turned, realizing what John had done. Its red eyes locked onto him. Carter. Then, everything shattered. A new beginning. John gasped. He opened his eyes. He was sitting in his truck. The desert stretched out before him, quiet and still. The sky was clear. No crash. No ship. No Reapers. John's hands were shaking. He turned on the radio. Static. Then, breaking news. Scientists are baffled by an unknown energy pulse detected earlier tonight. Experts have no explanation, but some theorize it may be related to a cosmic event. John let out a breath. He had done it. The Reapers were gone. Time was safe. But something felt off. John reached for his wrist. The machine was still there. His stomach dropped. Then, from the shadows, a pair of red eyes flickered in the distance. A deep, familiar voice echoed in the wind. Time always finds a way. The final gamble. John Carter sat motionless in his truck, his pulse hammering in his ears. The machine, the alien time device, was still attached to his wrist, glowing with faint golden symbols. It should have been erased along with the Reapers, along with everything that had happened. But somehow it remained. And then there were the eyes, glowing red, watching him from the darkness. John's fingers twitched toward the gun in his glove compartment. It wouldn't help, not against whatever was out there, but old habits died hard. The wind shifted. The red eyes blinked. Then, a deep voice, mechanical yet strangely familiar, whispered through the still desert air. It was not enough. John swallowed hard. He knew that voice. He shoved open the truck door, stepping onto the cool desert sand. The wind carried a faint scent of burning ozone. He knew what he would see before the figure even stepped into the moonlight. The Guardian. But it was different. Damage. Change. Its once sleek black armor was now cracked, pulsing with thin lines of molten energy. One of its arms hung limply at its side, the metal warped and broken. Its glowing spear was gone. John frowned. I reset time. You shouldn't be here. The Guardian's red eyes dimmed slightly. Neither should you. John hesitated. The night stretched between them. The silence was heavy. Then the Guardian took a slow step forward, its voice low, edged with something John had never heard before. Fear. The Endbringer survived. John's blood ran cold. A flaw in time. He took a step back, shaking his head. No, that's not possible. The reset was supposed to erase everything. The Guardian clenched its one functioning fist. It did. John frowned. Then how? The Guardian's glowing eyes locked onto him. Something else interfered. A chill crawled up John's spine. Something else. The Guardian nodded. Time was rewritten, but a remnant of the Endbringer endured, a sliver of its consciousness, trapped, waiting. It has begun again, but slower this time, hidden. John's jaw tightened. The fight wasn't over. His mind raced. If the Reapers were truly gone, but the Endbringer remained, then that meant it was trying to rewrite history again. John cursed under his breath. Where is it? The Guardian turned its head toward the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but something about the way the air rippled made John's stomach tighten. There. John narrowed his eyes. The air was wrong, almost like a mirage, except it wasn't just distorting light. It was distorting reality. John exhaled. Then let's end this. The hidden rift. The closer they got, the worse the world became. The stars flickered, disappearing for seconds at a time. The ground shifted, solid one moment and soft the next, as if it couldn't decide what was real. The air hummed with an unnatural vibration, filling John's skull with a dull pressure. Then they saw it. A wound in reality. It wasn't like the Reaper's rift. It was smaller, less stable. A jagged tear in time itself, pulsing with black and violet energy. Fragments of places, mountains, cities, oceans, flashed within it, blinking in and out of existence. And at its center, something moved. The Endbringer. But it was different now. It wasn't fully formed, a shifting, half-built mass, flickering between shapes, like it couldn't settle on what it was supposed to be. It wasn't alive. Not yet. But it was growing. John turned to the Guardian. Tell me we can stop it. The Guardian hesitated. If we destroy this remnant before it stabilizes, time will correct itself. John's gut twisted. And if we fail? The Guardian's red eyes glowed. Then all of history unravels. Time will collapse. John let out a slow breath. No pressure. Fighting a god. The Endbringer must have sensed them, because the ground split open beneath their feet. John barely leaped aside in time as the sand melted into darkness, revealing an endless void below. The Guardian lunged forward, its armor shifting, forming a new weapon, a jagged blade of raw energy, pulsing with blue fire. It slashed forward, tearing through the flickering form of the Endbringer. For a second, the creature glitched, its entire body distorting. Then it shrieked. The sound wasn't natural. It wasn't meant for human ears. John clamped his hands over his head as pain exploded through his skull. The Endbringer lashed out. A tendril of shifting black energy whipped forward, slamming into the Guardian. The alien warrior was launched backward, crashing through the sand with a deafening impact. John's stomach dropped. The Guardian wasn't moving. John turned back to the Endbringer. It was stabilizing. If he didn't act now, they would lose. The last sacrifice. John's wrist burned. He looked down. The machine was glowing. Not red, not blue. Gold. Something clicked in his brain. The time device wasn't just for travel. It was a weapon. A failsafe. John took a shaky breath. He had one shot. If he activated it now, he could channel every last bit of its power into one final attack. But it came at a price. There would be no going back. John clenched his jaw. Then he made his choice. He raised his hand and pressed the machine's core. Golden energy erupted outward, slamming into the Endbringer. The creature howled, its form unraveling, tearing apart at the molecular level. The rift behind it collapsed, pulling it in. The Guardian, barely standing, lifted its head and whispered, "It is done." John barely had time to smile. Then, he was gone. A new time. John opened his eyes. He was in a city. People walked past him, laughing, talking, completely unaware of what had just happened. John's breath caught. It worked. Time had reset, completely. The Endbringer was gone. The Reapers were erased. And he was alive. John swallowed hard. His wrist felt lighter. He looked down. The machine was gone. A weight lifted off his chest. He exhaled. Then, from the crowd, a familiar voice. "Carter." John froze. Slowly, he turned. There, standing by a cafe, was a man in a black coat. Tall. Strong. His eyes burned red. John's heart stopped. The Guardian was still here. And that meant something was still wrong. The last jump. John Carter stood frozen on the crowded city street. The world around him had returned to normal, but he hadn't. The last thing he remembered was sacrificing everything to stop the Endbringer. The time machine had been erased, the Reapers were destroyed, and history had been corrected. So why was the Guardian still here? The tall figure in the black coat stepped forward, his glowing red eyes locked onto John. He didn't hold his spear, didn't wear his armor, but there was no mistaking him. The Guardian had survived the reset. John's throat went dry. "You're not supposed to be here." The Guardian tilted his head slightly. "Neither are you." John's pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" The Guardian exhaled, and for the first time, his voice carried something strange. Not just authority, but regret. "Time is not finished with you." A cracked reality. John took a step back, his mind racing. The city around them continued as if nothing was wrong. Cars rolled by. People talked. Someone laughed in the distance. But then, John saw it. A flicker. For just a second, the entire world glitched. Buildings warped, streetlights bent. Pedestrians froze mid-step. The sky turned a shade darker, like a storm approaching from nowhere. Then, in the next blink, it was gone. John's breath hitched. What the hell was that? The Guardian's red eyes burned brighter. A fracture. John clenched his fists. "I thought we fixed time." The Guardian shook his head. "We only delayed the inevitable." John cursed under his breath. "So what now? You need me to fix it again." The Guardian was silent for a moment. Then, in a low, almost reluctant tone, he said, "No, you need to leave." John frowned. "What?" The Guardian's gaze locked onto him, more intense than ever. "You were never meant to exist in this timeline, Carter. The machine changed that. And now, the universe is trying to correct the mistake." John's stomach dropped. The Guardian wasn't just saying time was broken. He was saying John himself was the fracture. A man out of time. John turned away, his mind racing. This wasn't fair. He had saved time. He had fought the Reapers, risked everything, and made the ultimate sacrifice. He won. So why did it feel like he was still losing? He looked around. The city looked fine. People looked fine. But it was a lie. In the distance, he saw another glitch. A billboard flickered, flashing between 3 different ads at once. A pigeon froze mid-flight, wings unmoving for a full second before continuing, as if nothing happened. Reality was unraveling. And he was the cause. John turned back to the Guardian. "So what do we do?" The alien warrior's face remained unreadable. "We do what must be done." John exhaled. Which is? The Guardian took a slow step forward, reaching into his coat. And then, he pulled out something that should not exist. A small pulsing device. John's eyes widened. No, that's the time machine, the Guardian confirmed. A remnant, the last one. John's jaw tightened. I destroyed it. I saw it vanish. The Guardian nodded, but not before it left an echo. John's gut twisted. He had spent so long running from this thing, trying to fix the damage it caused. Now he was staring at the only piece left of it. John swallowed. What do you need me to do? The Guardian met his gaze. You must make one last jump. The final decision. John hesitated. Where? The Guardian exhaled. Back. Before the first mistake. John's pulse hammered. Back to the desert. The Guardian nodded. Back to the night you first found the ship. John felt his hand shake. That was where everything started. If he could go back, he could stop himself from ever touching the machine. But that meant he would erase himself. John took a deep breath, staring at the device. The last time machine. The last remnant of a war no one even knew had happened. He looked back at the Guardian. And what happens to you? The Guardian didn't flinch. I am a remnant, too. John's throat tightened. They both knew what that meant. If he went back and fixed time for good, neither of them would exist. No Guardian. No John Carter. Just a world that had never been broken. John closed his eyes. He had always been a soldier, always fought for something bigger than himself. Now he had one last mission. When he opened his eyes, he grabbed the device. All right, he muttered. One last jump. The first mistake, undone. The world around him bent. Time rippled. John barely had time to think before he slammed back into his body. Heat, sand, a distant car engine. He was back. It was the night it all started. The alien ship sat in the desert, its metallic hull reflecting the moonlight. His old self, the John Carter who hadn't yet touched the machine, stood just outside, staring at the strange, pulsing entrance. John's chest tightened. This was it. His younger self reached forward, fingers inches from the ship. John didn't hesitate. Asterisk, asterisk, he lunged forward. Asterisk, asterisk, and grabbed his past self's arm. The moment their skin touched, time shattered. A new reality. John gasped. He was somewhere else. The desert was gone. No ships, no machines. Just a small mechanic's garage. His garage. John blinked. His hands were covered in oil. He was holding a wrench. The sound of a radio crackled in the background. A normal night. A normal life. No reapers. No war. No fractures in time. John let out a slow, shaky breath. It had worked. The timeline was fixed. For the first time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Then, a whisper. Not a voice. Not a sound. Just a faint, ghostly presence. Like a memory that never existed. Time always finds a way. John's breath hitched. He turned, but there was nothing there. Just the garage. Just his life. And finally, peace.